Hello and welcome to this session of Wonk Week. My name is Megan and I'm a solutions engineer here at Quorum. We're going to give folks a few moments to join and then we'll get started. Okay, so I see the people who are joining and watching have kind of started to peter off at this point. So I think it's a great time to get started. Once again, my name is Megan Fisher, and we're here to discuss an ever important professional development topic, getting noticed at work. Before we dive in, I want to share a few housekeeping items. First, this session will be recorded, and the recording and slides will be distributed after the event. Second, you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen a chat box and a Q&A submission form. We encourage you to use the chat throughout the session to share insights and submit your questions to the Q&A as you think of them. Then we'll go through the questions at the end of the presentation. And with that, we're ready to dive into the content. I'm really excited to be joined here today by Cicely Simpson. Cicely Simpson is a keynote speaker, best-selling author of the book, Pull Up Your Chair, 5 Strategies to Change the Trajectory of Your Career, and an entrepreneur as founder and CEO of Summit Public Affairs in Washington, D.C., and a co-founder of the Pull Up Your Chair community, a groundbreaking career mentoring and training community. Cicely is a seasoned public operative, now working with her 4th presidential administration. She has also served in prominent roles such as legislative director for 2 congressmen and veteran of the C-suite, formerly as Vice President of Government Affairs at Dunkin' Brands, formerly an Executive Vice President of Public Affairs for the restaurant industry, and now as founder and CEO of Summit Public Affairs. Thank you so much, Cicely, for being here. And with that, I'll pass this conversation over to you.
Great. Thank you, Megan. I appreciate that and appreciate the opportunity to be here today. As we were just talking before we jumped on, I totally geek out during Wonk Week. So this is going to be awesome. I'm going to love today's conversation. For everybody who's watching, the chat box is open. I've got access to it. Megan has access to it. Listen, let's keep this conversational, but please put your questions in the chat. And then if you stick around, there is a free gift at the end when we go through Q&A, and we'll give you the link about how to access that free gift. So how's that for a teaser? If you stick around, and we'll make sure that you get that link that'll be in the chat box. So you can click on that, and I'll tell you what the free gift is going to be once we get to that point. But first, let me ask the question to get you guys going. I know it's lunchtime on the East Coast, depending on where you're located, maybe morning. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have ever been told you've got to develop a personal brand? Put a 1 in the chat if you've been told you've got to develop a personal brand. Or if someone has said, hey, what is your personal brand? Put a 1 in the chat if you've ever heard that term or been asked, what is your personal brand? Put a 1 in the chat. Nobody's been asked what is their personal brand? Really?
There's a lot. If you click over to the session, everyone's putting 1s right now.
Okay, wait, where am I? Holy cow, where am I right now? I'm in speakers. All right, I was going to say, wow, that's a total flat bomber, man, that went nowhere. What a horrible question to start with. Okay, great. All right. See, Megan, this is why you're here, my friend. Don't let me screw this up, okay? Don't let me screw this up.
Got you.
All right, so there are a bunch of 1s. All right, so, but do you know what that means? When people say you got to have a personal brand, you need a personal brand. Do you guys do you know what that means? I've always heard that term, and I thought, what is a personal brand? What is a personal brand? All right, let me ask you this. How many of you have been told you need to market yourself? You should market yourself in an interview, on your resume, in your cover letter. Market yourself at work every day. How many of you have heard that term? Give me a 2 in the chat if you've heard that you need to market yourself. And look, you see it on social media all the time, friends. So you may have seen it on social media. You need to learn how to market yourself. Give me a 2 in the chat if you've heard that one. All right. Yep. I got some yeps. I got some 100%. I got some 2s. Okay. All right. So let's agree. Is there anyone who's never heard those terms? If you've never heard personal brand or you need to market yourself, give me a big old goose egg. Give me a big 0 in the chat. If you've never heard either one of those and you're like, what is she talking about? Give me a zero. I got nothing, Cicely. Give me something to let me know that you're like, no, haven't heard those. All right. Okay. So we've got ones, twos. We've got multiple twos. Somebody put 222 in the chat. We've got, yep, 100%. Okay. So no zeros. So everyone has some familiarity with this idea of you need a personal brand or you need to market yourself. What if I told you both of those pieces of advice are completely wrong? The traditional notions of how to get noticed at work are the worst pieces of advice that you could be given. What if I told you that? Does that kind of take you back a little bit? And you're like, well, whoa, wait a minute. I've always heard these things. Why are they wrong? Someone says, thank goodness, right? Yeah, someone says, I would agree in the chat. Absolutely. Absolutely. Y'all, this is one of those, what we're going to cover today is I'm going to tell you how to get noticed at work, but not in the way that you might think. It's not the develop the personal brand. It's not you got to market yourself. How many of you have been told, put your head down and the work will speak for itself? Like, just put your head down and get the work done and your work will speak for itself, right? I'm raising both hands on that one because I've been told that for years. Your work will speak for itself. You'll get noticed if you do a good job. Well, guess what? That one doesn't work either. So let's agree today. If I had a piece of paper, I should have planned this. Let's rip up the script. Let's rip up all the things that we've been told about how to get noticed at work, right? I see some capital yeses in the chat. I see some, all right, great. You guys are totally following along with me. Somebody says, I'm excited you're saying this. Yeah, look, let's agree today. We're going to rip up the script over the next few minutes on how to get noticed at work. And we're going to give you a new script. We're going to give you the new script about what to say and how to say it, because I coach so many government relations and public affairs professionals every day in our online career community that we run. And there's one common theme. No one's ever told me this. And I'm like, right, because people don't know. And if they know, they stick to the old script, not the way you should be evolving with your career. So grab a pen and paper, grab your iPad, grab your phone. I'm going to give you guys 5 tips today about how to get noticed at work. And then I'm going to give you kind of a ninja tip at the end, and then we'll give you the free gift. So that's what we're going to cover over the next few minutes, and then we're going to jump into Q&A. So make sure you put your Q&A in the chat so that Megan and I can tackle that at the end, along with that free gift I mentioned. All right, so I bought you a few seconds. Hopefully you got a pen and paper, your iPad, your phone. Obviously you're sitting at your computer maybe, so get ready to take notes, all right? How to get noticed at work. So if we're ripping up the script and it's not the script that you think, then let me ask you this before I give you the 5 tips. Why do you want to get noticed at work? Why? Do you want to have greater impact in your role? Are you looking for advancement? Do you want to climb that ladder, go to the next level, go to the next step? You know, maybe you are preparing for an interview. Maybe you are taking a leap to, or you want to take the leap to the next organization, or take that leap in your career and you want to go somewhere else to do that. Is it an interview that's driving your desire to get noticed at work? Maybe, let's be honest, we're not working for our health. Maybe it's to make more money. I just had someone in our career community message me this morning about a salary range, and she needs coaching on salary ranges. Maybe it's you're looking for a higher salary range. What is driving your desire to get noticed at work? It may just be impact and having a greater impact in the role you're in, and that's okay. It doesn't always have to be about the next thing. But you got to answer that question, because why you want to get noticed at work comes down to really, what do you want? What do you want to get out of that? Why are you want to get noticed, and what is your end goal? That's only something that you can answer. But as you think about that, there's one question you have to answer every single day in your career that's going to really help you define what getting noticed looks like. And that's why you. 2 words. That is the question you have to answer at work every single day. And that's why these 5 tips I'm going to give you, my friends, so many people get this wrong. They think you get noticed at work in the big moment. It's the annual review. It's when the board's in town. It's when the boss needs something or the CEO. But the tips I'm going to give you are how to get noticed every day, how to increase that impact and your visibility every single day. The big moments work. Yes, the big moments are important, and we're going to talk about those. But the advancement and visibility and getting noticed and the answer to why you want to get noticed happens every day, not just in those big moments. And that's why the question you've got to start with before you ever get to these 5 tips are, why you? Why you for that project? Why should you lead that team? Why are you the one going to the Hill or the state capitol? Why are you the face of an organization? Why you? Why you? Why you? That's an important one because people often go to the how to get noticed without taking a step back and saying, you got to answer the why you question, because that's the question everybody, your boss is asking. Why you, Cicely? Why am I picking you for this? Why are you doing this? The why you. And so as you write down why you, here's tip number 1. And you guys may freak out. You may freak out in the chat over this one, okay? So if you freak out, thankfully I'm on virtual, so like you can't throw anything at me, right? We're not in person as Wonk Week was on Monday, because you might freak out over this one. But tip number 1, the most important kind of advocacy is self-advocacy. The most important kind of advocacy at work is self-advocacy. Now, I tell you that's the most important part of advocacy, period, work or personal, professional or personal. But we're going to keep this to how to get noticed at work. It starts right here. That's why the why you question is so important. Self-advocacy. But here's the objection I get every time I say that. I've said it at Wonk Week before. I've said it, listen, I coach and teach. I'm heading to Council of State Governments in 2 weeks to talk about this with legislators and with other lobbyists. There is a piece of the equation here on self-advocacy that people always say, nope, I'm not talking about myself at work. And my answer is, if you don't learn how to advocate for yourself, no one's going to do it for you. And that's the lesson I've learned over 20 plus years of being in DC and state capitals and local governments and all the roles that Megan mentioned. Is people say to me all the time, how did you advance in your career? I'm like, I can advocate for myself. I can absolutely tell you on any given day why you want me on that team, that role, that what I've done well. And we're going to get into all those pieces of these 5 tips. Self-advocacy is the most important piece. So we're starting there first. The why you has to be, you got to answer that question for yourself. Okay. So tip number 1, self-advocacy is the most important form of advocacy. And all right, nobody has lost your mind in the chat yet, so we're good. I haven't lost you yet. We're through tip number 1, and you're still with me. And I love that someone says 100%, no one else is going to advocate for you. That's right. And my friends, let me tell you, when I was executive vice president of public affairs with the National Restaurant Association, had a fairly large team there. I led 8 teams there, as a matter of fact. And I remember one conversation that stuck out to me, and it was someone who was on my team who doing great work, but they were kind of on the old script of just put the head down and do the work and you're going to get noticed. And the person came to me one day and said, and it was review time, right? One of those big moments. And they said, Cicely, why didn't I get a raise? And I'm like, well, did you talk to your immediate supervisor? Like the person who my direct report, who was her boss, like, did you talk to him? And she said, well, but I thought you knew the good work I was doing. I'm constantly reporting it. I'm constantly saying in all of our team meetings, I thought you knew. And I said, but you never came to me and said this was what you were looking for. Hey, you're hoping for that raise. You're hoping to build that career ladder and plan. The self-advocacy piece, guys, don't think people notice of what you want and how you want it if you don't voice it. People are busy. Your boss is busy. Your teammates are busy. People are head down doing the work too, and they're not noticing unless you say, hey, I did a great job on this project, but guess what? I kind of need your help developing that plan of what's next for me. Where am I going in this organization? What does that progression look like? All of those conversations have to start with you. Don't sit there and wish and hope, because hoping is not a strategy that somebody's going to notice the great work you're doing unless you're advocating for yourself as part of that great work. So I share that example because that's one that stayed with me for a while, that I tell people all the time. you got to raise your hand and say, hey, hang on a second. Let's talk about what my career progression looks like. That's how you get noticed. Is you got to advocate for yourself first and foremost. Okay. So that's tip number one. Number two, what is your value proposition? Not your personal brand, not your personal brand. Personal branding is kind of your strengths. That's kind of the inner piece. Value is what you have to offer to your audience. It is what you offer to your team, to your boss. If you have members, if you're in a member-driven organization, if you are in a board-driven organization, value is what you offer to others. And here's what I want you to write down for the value formula. Literally, this is what you can say at work. It's the value you offer plus, with the plus sign, plus the benefit to your audience equals your value proposition. That is the sentence you need for that's your value formula. That is how you determine what your value proposition is. So if you say to me, hey, Cicely, I'm a strategic thinker, I'm going to say, okay, well, everybody in government affairs and public affairs says they're a strategic thinker. What makes you different as a strategic thinker? Or what somebody says, hey, I'm organized. Okay, well, 99% of the population is organized. What makes your value in strategic thinking or being organized? What makes you different? That's the value piece. Okay, it's not personal branding. It's not strengths. What are your strengths? Don't buy into that question either. Those are all very internal. Value is what you offer someone else. Let me give you that value formula again. The value you offer plus the benefit to your audience equals your value proposition. That is the most important piece of self-advocacy that you can do every day. So if you start with tip number one, you're advocating for yourself. You say, well, how do I do that? You do that with tip number two. It is your value proposition. So if you're a strategic thinker, how does that help your organization? Does that help you look around corners to see what issues are coming? Does that help you forecast trends that are coming in your issue area? Does that help you position your organization very differently? Let's say in the age of AI, which I'm coaching so many people on right now about how to really leverage that in their careers. What makes your value proposition different from somebody else? And what is the benefit that you offer? What is the benefit that you offer through that value proposition? Are you guys with me? Is that making sense? The value that you offer is how you position yourself at work. Because let's be honest. We don't lead with facts and logic. Yeah, we're government affairs people, we're GR people, PA people, but all of us lead with emotion. We want to know how it impacts us. Well, when you talk about your value proposition, it's the value you're offering the organization. I do this all the time when I review people's resumes. Your resume is usually task, responsibility. And I'm like, nope, that is not it. Every statement on your resume should be the value that you offer plus the benefit to your audience. That should be every bullet point on your resume, because that makes you stand out from everybody else. But what do you do at work? You start talking about the projects you've led. Hey, what was the benefit of that to your membership? What's the benefit of that to your team? Guys, I'm telling you, that is the secret sauce stuff that has propelled me through Washington for 20 years, is knowing my value proposition. Literally just write that formula down and keep that handy so that every conversation you begin to have is about how your value is helping someone else. How you're helping. Listen, it works on the Hill. I do it all the time. And the free gift I'm going to give you, I have a case study about how I talk to legislators so that my value now becomes I'm helping them, and they absolutely love it. They love it. And that's why I coach and teach other GR professionals that as well. The value proposition. All right, you guys got that piece? So if we're advocating for ourselves, and that's the most important tip, then number two is the how you get noticed at work, knowing your value proposition and writing that formula out and being able to put that into words. Now, I coach and teach this very individually to people because your value is different for all of you. So I kind of walk you through a formula that I kind of help you develop that value proposition. And look, that is the piece that makes this super powerful, is it is unique to you. Your value is very different from somebody else's. But that value proposition is all you need, which then leads to number three. Tip number three. We're on number three. Number three is the success equation. The success equation. Write down success equation as tip number three. Tip number 3, the success equation means you have a valuable, listen, as GR and PA folks, we have a unique skill set that no one else in the world has. How do I know that? I don't know. Where is it? Oh, yeah. There's a whole stack of them right over there. The book that I wrote with Forbes Books, when Forbes reached out to me in 2021 and said, have you ever thought about writing a book? I was like, why the heck would I write a book? And they were like, well, you have a very unique background. I'm like, no, I don't. There are thousands of me around DC and in the country. Like, have you ever met a lobbyist? And they were like, no. I was like, well, there's a whole bunch of us. And they were like, but your skill set is very different than anyone we've encountered in the business sector. So we want to talk to you about writing a book about that unique experience. And I was like, is it unique? Huh. It took somebody else, guys, telling me the skill set that we have is unique. And how do we leverage that unique expertise to your advantage to get noticed at work? But let's be honest, to get noticed even in other parts of your professional career is knowing that your expertise and your experience is part of that value equation. Part of that value formula is the expertise and experience you already have. It's how you talk about that expertise and experience that sets you apart. That's why it's called a success equation. You already have what you need to get noticed at work. You're just not using the right language about your expertise and experience to bring that to the forefront. So often we're focused on the current project or the current bill we're trying to pass or the current, thing we're dealing with versus actually putting perspective around, I have experience in this area. I should be the person who leads that issue. I should be the person who is out front on that project. Hey, I'm doing this right now with somebody who's in government relations in DC. His boss just got fired last week. And my thing to him is, you need to step into that leadership role. And of course, the pushback was, I don't know. And I'm like, no. We're going to coach you and teach you how to step into that leadership role. How? By bringing your experience forward and talking about the value that you can offer by leading that team in a way that the last guy did. You guys see how that experience really plays into that? It's huge. Bringing your expertise and experience sets you apart from someone else because no one has the same experience that you do. So that success equation is kind of the evidence. It's kind of the evidence of the value proposition. Is that making sense? Yeah, give me a 1 in the chat if you're following me on tips 1, 2, and 3 before I go on to 4 and 5 and then open it up. Give me a 1 in the chat if you're following me. All right. You guys are probably thinking the same thing I hear from folks, the other GR and PA folks. No one's ever told me this. Listen, I'm telling you, it works. I can give you example after example of other GR professionals and public affairs professionals who are using this right now, and they're killing it. So I'm glad you guys are following me. Lots of ones. All right, so that's tip number 1, self-advocacy. Tip number 2, that is your value formula. Number 3 is your success equation. That is your expertise. I actually did a webinar recently called Monetize Your Experience, because we're so focused on getting new skills and talents, we forget to leverage the experience we already have. You got to leverage the experience you already have, because that is the piece that people want to know. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4 is maximize I. Maximize I. Literally I. You can put that in quotations. Maximize I. What is the I? The I is impact. Again, don't throw anything at the screen, but we are taught in government relations and public affairs, and in our world, we're taught to be influential. And don't get me wrong, influence is important. But influence is only going to get you so far. Take that influence and turn it into impact. And turn it into impact. And if any of you have read the book or if you've heard me speak at other conferences for GA and for GR and PA professionals, you've heard me tell the story about impact. That sometimes you got to raise your hand and say, you know what, I'm not sure that strategy is the best strategy. We've tried that before and it didn't work. So if we look at what happened before, how do we now learn a lesson from that and try something different? That was the first way I found out the important part of impact. And I'll tell you a quick story. When I worked at Dunkin' Brands, yep, that's Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin Robbins. You can let the jokes fly in the chat because everybody says, "Oh, that's a sweet gig," and I'm like, "Can't." It was. I got donuts all the time. Perfect. Donuts and coffee. But I didn't know the impact that I could have as a GR and PA professional until it was the 2008 election. And we were trying to figure out how to honor the elected candidates, right? Everybody has an election promotion. You guys know this. Go get free ice cream, free coffee, free whatever. And we were trying to figure out, well, I shouldn't say we, I was brought in at the last minute. You guys know how that works as GR folks. But the marketing team had put together this great plan about Barack Obama and John McCain. And they had put together ice cream flavors on the basket side for honoring John McCain and Barack Obama. And let's just say they were not the most flattering ice cream flavors, because think about it, Barack Obama was the first interracial president, but also candidate at that time. And the marketing team had come up with a chocolate vanilla swirl as the way to honor him through ice cream. And you're thinking, that's probably not a good idea. Chocolate vanilla swirl may fall a little flat. That may not go over well. John McCain, they were thinking of a peanut brittle or something that would honor him in his age. And so the conversation very quickly became, we're going to release this. We think this is a great idea. And somebody copied me on the email. Do you guys ever get copied on an email and you're like, who sent that to me? Because you want to go down the hall and be like, please don't put me on any more of those emails, because it was the email saying, hey, we're announcing this. And I was like, oh, crap. Who put me on this email? Because I was conflicted. Do I speak up and say, hey, guys, this might not go over well with the public. You may not want a chocolate vanilla swirl for Barack Obama or a peanut brittle for John McCain. Like, that may not go over well with people. That's probably not the best ice cream flavors we want to use, considering who these gentlemen are. And so I wrote back on the email and I was like, hey, I'm the new kid here, because I was a few months into my job at that point. I said, hey, I'm the new kid here, but have you considered, and I listed by bullet point by email, probably why those were not a good idea. And I hit send on the email. And I thought, I am so fired right now. I am so fired. As soon as they read that email, they're going to be like, well, she hadn't been here long and she doesn't know what she's talking about. And I always got the question anyway, why do we have a political person anyway? I was like, I am so screwed. So I sat there and waited. Nobody answered. Sat there and waited. Nobody answered. I thought, oh, I shouldn't have said anything. And then all of a sudden, you guys know how this works. You get the reply all, boom, 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 boom. And your email fills up. And I was like, man, this is the person who's going to tell me, oh, Cicely, you shouldn't have said anything. And I opened the emails and it was like, thank you. Hadn't thought about that. You know what? That's an interesting perspective. So glad that you brought that up. And I started getting that we hadn't thought about that, because the public persona, the PR piece, the political piece was not their bailiwick. It was mine. And after that moment, I started getting invited to a lot of meetings, and I got put in a lot of places I didn't usually get put. I started getting invited to the executive leadership team meetings for the company, and now I'm the only person sitting there who's not an executive team member. And so the power of impact hit me in that moment. That I'm not saying you do that all the time, but I'm saying when you have a tangible impact on the business or on your membership, and I did the same thing at the restaurant association. I do the same thing for my clients now at my firm. When you begin to have a tangible impact, it counts. It counts. People then want you in the conversations you were not in before. They stop asking, why do we have a political person? Why should we involve the GR team? They stop asking those questions that we deal with all the time, because people don't usually get what we do. So the maximizing I is super important in terms of not about influence, guys. It's about the tangible impact you have and how you bring that forward. That, you want to talk about getting noticed at work? That is like the rocket fuel for getting noticed at work, is bringing impact every single day. All right. Lastly, it's the triple L. That's tip number 5, is the triple L. The triple L is when we start talking about, how many times have you been asked about a mistake you've made in an interview or in a conversation? Hey, tell me about a weakness or a mistake that you made and how did you correct it? Worst question ever, by the way. Talk about lessons learned, not mistakes. Mistakes are repeatable. Lessons learned are you learn the lesson and you move on. That goes hand in hand with the success equation. Because when you start talking about your experience and your expertise, now you're talking about, hey, we learned this lesson on the last time we did this, or hey, you guys may recall this happened. So let's learn that lesson. And it gives you an opportunity to pivot into a different kind of conversation that allows you to have impact. Okay, so triple L Lasting lessons learned is how you bridge the gap with your experience and you bring that forward into the present conversation about the value you offer. You phrase it in terms of lessons learned, not mistakes or we did this wrong or hey, that didn't work. No, it's a lessons learned. It's a positive conversation about how your experience plays into the current conversation. That's the value you offer. You're connecting those dots. That's huge. That's huge to connect those dots. So let me go over this one more time, Megan, before we jump into questions and do the free gift. All right. So tip number one, self-advocacy is the most important form of advocacy. You don't advocate for yourself at work. No one's going to do it for you. And we all know that, right? Listen, we've all experienced that. Number two was that value formula. The value that you offer plus the benefit to your audience equals your value proposition. We're not marketing ourselves anymore. We're not talking about personal branding. We're talking about what is your value proposition. That's just a language shift that people are going to stand up and notice. After that, success equation. How are you bringing your experience and expertise into the value conversation? You've had a demonstrated record of success. That's your experience. That's your success. Bring that forward. Don't be scared to talk about that. And then the maximizing I is maximizing impact. Impact is huge. Impact, when you have a tangible impact, guys, I'm telling you, I can give you example after example of people who are having impact right now in their careers, and it's just propelling them forward in so many ways. And then finally, that triple L is lessons learned, lasting lessons learned, not mistakes, lasting lessons learned. And again, the language here matters because you're using language that no one else uses. That's why the GR people who are in our career community say, no one's ever taught me this, because we use the old language patterns, not these new language patterns. The patterns are going to set you apart and get you noticed. The new language patterns, no one talks like this. This stuff actually works. Okay. So Megan, I'm going to pop the link to the free gift, and we can, guys, the link in the chat, go to that link. Oh, did it come through? Ah, there we go. I did an ebook that you can grab at that link. The ebook is how to be more persuasive in lobbying. It's questions I get from people I coach every day, but also other folks who hear me speak and they say, well, how do you have an impact on legislators, or how do you impact your audience, or how do you talk to someone who doesn't agree with you on an issue? I put together an ebook, and I actually give you a case study on a very contentious issue that's still alive and well right now called Joint Employer that I've lobbied for years. That ebook not only walks you through how to be more persuasive and bridge the gap when you're having contentious conversations with legislators or other people, but I also give you a case study you can literally implement in your own lobbying career. So grab that. I think we broke your site. Okay, well, then my website guy's gonna love that when I tell him. Okay, the link is broken. Okay, tell you what, then go, let me tell you this, all right? The link, let me do it again because it worked. Megan, let's go ahead and grab questions, and I'm gonna make sure that link is working because we tested it right before we jumped on and it was good for me. But tell you what, go ahead, Megan, I'm gonna give them the actual link. Let me go to my website and grab the link. It's on my website, guys. But Megan, go ahead, my friend, and I'm gonna grab the link and we'll go from there.
Perfect. So we have a few questions so far in the Q&A. The first one, and two people have liked it, so other people, are wanting to know the answer of this question as well. If you are more of an introverted person, do you have any tips on self-advocating?
I do. All right, guys, hang on. All right, so CicelySimpson.com is the website. Not self-promotional here. Not advocating for myself here. I'm just telling you. All right, there is the link on the website. Okay, so the link worked for some people, didn't work for others. There is the long link. I was trying to scare you from having the long link. There's the long link that actually gives you the ebook. Okay, all right, Megan, to that question about introverts, the reason why we give you the formula. Listen, if you're an extrovert, you could probably just knock this out of the park. But if you're an introvert, you need that formula. You need to know how to literally say those things. And so when you talk about your value formula, use that formula. That helps introverts, because look, let's be honest here. Even if you're an extrovert or introvert, not all of us are good on our feet. when someone asks a question, or you feel like you're in a meeting, or you feel like you need to say something where you really want to bring out your value proposition, use that formula. But also for introverts, write it down write it down and practice it. It just needs to be one sentence. You can use it for 2 or 3 things, but it's just one sentence. Write it down and practice it so that when you find yourself in those moments, introverted or extroverted, you're ready to bring that forward. So again, strategic thinker. Write down why you're a strategic thinker and how it benefits your audience, and just kind of practice that in your head if you're an introvert. And then when the conversation comes up and you're sitting in a team meeting and they're talking about a new strategy and you're thinking, oh God, this is my moment, right? This is my moment. What do I say? Now you've got that in your head. But look, for the first, I don't know, probably 6-9 months, I worked in the restaurant industry when I worked at Dunkin'. I had no idea what those people were talking about. No clue. I had notes in front of me of the things I wanted to say because I had no clue. It's okay to have notes in front of you and have your value formula statement right at the very top. That's okay. No one's going to see it but you, but it helps you kind of put that in your head so that when you're in those moments, you're now practicing it and saying it out loud. And that's how you get more comfortable as an introvert. Just write it down and have notes in front of you and practice it so that you practice speaking it out loud.
Love that. Another one we got, someone wrote in, I work at a large firm in an entry-level lobbyist capacity. Do you have any tips for making myself visible to a large and wide-ranging team when I'm not able to lead on projects just yet?
Great question. And listen, just because you're entry level, my friend, that's totally okay. Here's what I would suggest for you is, even if you're not leading a project or a team, you are adding value to the team and to the organization. First question, the why you question, answer that question. How are you doing that? How are you adding value in your role? Okay. That's what I would ask you to think of first. And then second, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable here. Listen, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to talk about specifics. I'll walk you through this for your role. What I would challenge you to do is, after you think about how you're adding value, the next piece of that is, if you're in an entry-level position, you do want to be visible. You want to be the person who is prepared for the meeting, and you go in and you have suggestions and you're engaging in conversation and you're super involved. You're the one who's going to want to raise your hand. And if there's a team being put together, hey, I'd love to be part of that team. Hey, I'd love to work on that issue. You're going to be the person who's going to start to say, hey, I think I have some valuable experience here that can add to that. Can I be part of that? It's okay to ask to be part of projects and teams and be visible on issues that you're interested in, so that you begin to raise that visibility and profile. Now, if you're like, I need some language cues on how to do that, message me on LinkedIn. I'll jump on the phone. I'll tell you, I'll give you some language cues of exactly how to do that. And you can give me some more specifics about your role, and we can get super tactical in that way. Okay. But my first thing would be, what value are you already adding? You know, you're doing something well because you got the role. What are you doing well? What value you're adding? And then start to put that value out there in terms of how you're having impact and raising your hand in that regard.
Okay. We have another one that just came in, 2 more. The first one is, how do you connect with your client when they are focused on your diverse identity as a barrier?
One more time. That's a biggie. One more time.
How do you connect with your client when they are focused on your diverse identity as a barrier?
Ooh. I think, first of all, that sucks. That kind of comes across as like, wait, what? They're focused on your identity as a bit. Wait, what?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Listen, I'm not going to get on my soapbox. I can feel my blood pressure rising. I'm not going to get on my soapbox about that one. That is a very personal conversation that whoever asked that should reach out to me. Here's my general advice for people. I've been that person. I have been the first, the only, the youngest, all the labels, and people were happy to remind me of that. So they were focused more on my identity than the work I could do for them. I totally get that. What you've got to be able to do is, look, personally, if it was me, I love proving people wrong. I love those kind of people because I'm like, you're focused on this. I'm going to show you what I can do for you and prove you wrong. I'm not saying that's you. That's just how I respond. But when you have someone who's treating you that way, or is more focused on your identity as a barrier, you do have to decide you're giving your power away to that person. You're giving your power away to that person. And look, my podcast is called the Pull Up Your Chair podcast. I just did an interview with someone last week who wrote a book called Living and Leading Without Apology: How to Reclaim Your Power. My first advice to you would be, they're looking at you that way. Don't give that person the power over you. Keep your power with you. And I'm happy to go into details about how you can interact with those people if you reach out to me. Don't give that, my advice to you is don't give your power away to that person. When I worked, I won't say what role, because I won't say what role. I had somebody come up to me and say to me, and look, I won't say it because I don't want to get too deep into that. I had somebody come up to me and say to me, he said, "You're going to fail, and I look forward to watching you fail." And I didn't even have the job yet. It was part of my interview process with the board, and that's what he said to me. And I could not lose my temper as I usually do in those moments because it was in a board setting, but that's what somebody came up to me and said to me. I wasn't even hired yet. "I look forward to watching you fail. You're not the right person for this job." And don't think I didn't show up at that job every single day trying to prove that man wrong. So reach out to me. I'll give you some personal advice. But my point there is, don't give your power away to somebody who only sees your identity and not the value you offer.
Love that. You mentioned the Council of State Governments. What other state and federal level associations would you recommend we look into in order for us to have the most impact in state governments?
Well, I will tell you, I don't know that I can recommend them. I mean, I've dealt with a lot over the years. I'm speaking to them at their conference in a couple of weeks. So I'm speaking a lot at those kinds of conferences and to those kinds of groups. Council of State Governments is one I'm having interaction with. State Government Affairs Council, SGAC. I've worked with SGAC for years. I've been a member of theirs for years. Obviously, I would ask you guys to reach out to Quorum and for their recommendations as well. Megan may have recommendations as well. Obviously, you've got, if you're focused in the state government relations capacity on the RGAs, the DGAs, the RAGAs, the DAGAs, my goal for you, and I'm sorry to answer a question with the question, but here's my question for you. You got to know when you go join a group, what is your goal? What do you want to get out of the group? Okay, so I don't usually recommend groups for the sake of groups. My thing is, what is your focus and what is your goal, and how does the group help you accomplish that goal? I'm never a fan of joining things for the sake of joining things. How is it going to help you? Will help you narrow that list of groups you may or may not want to be involved with, and also help you decide which groups are going to help you reach your goal in your job. So if you're focused on governors, that you may want to focus on just the governors. If you're focused on the state legislatures, then you may want to go with one of the groups that just focus on state legislators. So I would ask you to actually think about that in a little bit of a different turn in terms of who's going to help you reach your goals the easiest in your job, and choose groups that way.
And then the final question is, how do you get someone who knows your value, but your organization doesn't have room for promotion to advocate on your behalf when they are the only one who can?
Well, that's a great question. And I would, couple of things there. One, if you know there's no growth, am I understanding that correctly? There's not a growth path. Am I understanding that correctly? It sounds like there's not a progression path for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Not my role here to tell you to quit your job. That's not my role. The question is, do you want to first of all, the question is, do you believe you're adding value? It sounds like you do. It believes, you're adding tremendous value to your role. One, is the value appreciated? If it's appreciated, that may be a reason to kind of stay there and stick it out and see if there's a progression path that opens. Two, if it's not appreciated, that's a very different conversation about, if you're in a place where you're not appreciated, do you want to stay there? And I have been in places where I have been appreciated, and I've been in places where I have not been appreciated and stayed way too long. That's an important distinction of a question you've got to answer, because even if there's not a progression path now, there could be at some point. And if you feel valued and appreciated and your values noticed, that's one piece. But if it's not, that's a whole other conversation. Have they said that to you? Have you asked about that progression? Have you advocated for yourself already and it didn't work? There's a couple of questions I would ask for you if you want to reach out to me, that I would love to go kind of a little deeper and say, have you advocated for yourself? Did it work? Did it not work? Why did it not work? There's probably a couple of pieces there to that question that I would say are sub questions that'll be very important in that answer.
All right. Can we use this value add formula for pay equity conversations? And do you have advice for navigating those conversations specifically? I'm making 10 days less than a colleague with the same title despite working here 2+ years longer.
Sorry, I get excited. I want to jump in on my, okay, sorry, Megan, didn't mean to cut you off, my friend.
Right
I get a little worked up about this stuff. Yes, that value. So those 5 things, but mainly 2, 3, 4, and 5, that's what you need for your pay salary conversations. Absolutely. The most important piece of that pay salary conversation, that pay equity conversation, is going to be, hopefully you're writing this down, your value proposition. Why are you different from the person who is higher than you, but you've been there longer? What sets you, I'm sorry, I'm getting really tactical here. What sets you apart from that person? You got to really be super focused, I would say, on 3 things that set you apart from that person. That is your value formula. So yeah, start there. But then you're going to go next. Why does your experience and expertise set you apart? You've been there longer. What have you done during the time you've been there longer? By the way, if you know what the pay disparity is, you got to go there. You got to go there. Because if you know what it is, now there's a respectful way to do that without calling somebody out, but you got to go there, because you got to have a factual conversation, not an emotional one. This is where so many people screw up on the pay conversation, whether you're getting a job or you're already in a job. People get, even annual performance reviews, you get super emotional. This is not about emotion, guys. This is about facts. You use those 4 tips. Those are all very factual tips. That's how you have a salary conversation. Not about emotion. It ain't about the person. It's about you and why you believe you need that promotion, and why you've been there longer, and why you believe you should. So this is all about a factual conversation, not an emotional one. If you get emotional, they're going to completely discount you as, oh, that person was emotional. If you're factual, it's hard to argue with facts. That's why that success, that value formula, success equation, that's factual. That's your expertise, right? The impact, that's factual. Lessons learned, that's factual. They can't argue with those 4 tips if you line it up in just that way. Yeah, you got to go there.
I love this. I'm reading in the chats right now. Abigail, Amanda, they all say that this was their favorite webinar of Wonk Week yet. Yes.
Thank you guys. I saw somebody found me on TikTok. Good Lord. Yeah, I am on TikTok. I'm on YouTube. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. Yeah, guys, I by the way, I coach and teach this way every single morning online in our career community, and you get tips from me every single day. I'm on all those channels every day. I post on social media every day, and then I have a newsletter that goes out on my website that also offers tips that you can't get on social media. You get tips from me in my newsletter. So somebody said you're on TikTok. Unfortunately, yes. And I'm trying to do better on TikTok. But listen, if you guys like this kind of advice, you can connect with me on social, or certainly on my website, sign up for our newsletter, and I'm happy to, you'll get these kind of tips every day. But Megan, did I miss anything else before we go? I know we're right there at time. And hopefully, folks, guys, grab that ebook. I've had about 125 GR and PA professionals who've already grabbed that even before I came to today, because I made it free on social media 2 weeks ago. Feel free to grab that at that link. It's going to be hugely helpful for you in terms of actual factual case studies you can use. Yeah. But Megan, my friend, did I miss anything?
No, it looks like all of our question answers have been answered. So thank you so much again, Cicely, and everyone for joining us today. The next session coming up at 1 are 2 great sessions, High Impact Video in Public Affairs with Max Kringen and Emma Solomon, and Proven Strategies to Engage Legislators and Staff with Addison Pruitt. So to select a section, you can either navigate to the main agenda, or you'll see a pop-up on your screen here to select your next session. But Cicely, thank you so much. This was awesome, even to just be here moderating and listening to the conversation. And thank you everyone for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you guys. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of Wonk Week.
Bye everyone.